to you. Thanks, Hastings. It's so awesome to be here. And thank you very much to Fluoride Free New Zealand for organising everything, for the local people, Angela and team that set it all up, and for, of course, Mary and Kane and Mark that have been doing so much work to pull all this together. Amazing, amazing job. And thanks also to NZ doctors, because what heroes they are. They've been absolutely hammered by the Medical Council for daring to talk about informed consent. They've been hammered for doing the very thing that every doctor in New Zealand is legally obliged to do. That is how screwed up our system has become. And just as Matt said, the issues with fluoride, the facts, the science are beyond doubt. The issues with the law should be beyond doubt too. The New Zealand Supreme Court has already ruled in 2018 that mass medication with fluoride in drinking water is a medical treatment that triggers the Bill of Rights. And yet somehow the Director General of Health, perhaps he should be called the Director General of Non-Health, but the Director General of Health managed to make a directive for 14 councils around New Zealand that they must put this neurotoxin, this ecotoxin, into public drinking water. And I lived in Mount Maunganui, where they get the neurotoxin and the ecotoxin from. They make superphosphate there, and one of the waste products is the fluoride that comes with a sprinkling of cadmium and uranium and a bit of aluminium and a whole lot of other toxic chemicals that the council's prohibited from letting out through their chimney stack. So they have to collect it in the scrubbers, and then they have two choices. They can either pay to dispose of it as a hazardous waste, or they can sell it to be put in our drinking water for any community council that's silly enough to do that. So this is the gravy trail that we're following. Now, huge thanks to New Health New Zealand Incorporated, who are the group that have been through the court process to get that ruling, first in the Supreme Court, and then they went back to court and got a ruling that that directive from the Director General was unlawful. And I don't even know why we had to file in court, because there's a thing called the rule of law. The government and everybody else is obliged to obey the law. And yet somehow the New Zealand government's lawyers have been saying, oh, Bill of Rights, just a procedural matter. He forgot to do a little procedural step. So what this case that you guys have all come together for is, does our Bill of Rights count for anything or not? That's really what we're asking the High Court to say. Does it matter? We've got all these rights that are written into the law at a constitutional level, and the Supreme Court said that as well. Constitutional rights, they're based on international rights that have long been accepted, the right to decline medical treatment. Does it mean anything? We've also got the Health and Disabilities Code of Patient Rights. So that was following from the Dame Sylvia Cartwright inquiry in cervical cancer. And as a result of that inquiry, they passed regulations, so not an act of parliament, but regulations, which is pretty high level, protecting a whole lot of consumer rights. So everybody who's consuming something, some health services, is entitled to these rights, and everybody who's providing health services is obliged to promote those rights. So this council is a provider of health services since it started putting fluoride in the water. So they're obliged to do this too. And one of those rights is they must uphold the law. So they say they're scared of the unlawful directive from the Director General that the court's already said is unlawful, but they're more than happy to ignore the Bill of Rights and the Health and Disability Code that protects everybody's rights. And this makes, to me, no sense. I don't understand why we all had to drop everything and urgently file an injunction application. We shouldn't have to do that. But we have because we did have to. Because if we don't stand up for our rights, they disintegrate before our very eyes. And all of us coming together, the people power is what makes a difference. We're all here because we make it our priority. And that's what's going to make a difference. We're going to stand up here. We did our thing in Nelson. We slowed them down. We got the extension. These guys chose not to ask for an extension, but instead to just say, oh, well, we're just going to do what the Director General told us to do. Okay, let's see what the court says. Let's make them accountable to the people. So, 16th of May, and it was a bit of a miracle that we got a hearing so quickly. It was a brilliant job by everybody pulling together to get all the paperwork together and get everything into court, and a bit of luck on our side and probably a bit of good karma. We're going to be there in the High Court, 16th of May, in Wellington, because that was the only place we could get a hearing that quickly. It's a public court, everybody's welcome. Tell your friends in Wellington, come down and support us, because that's the other thing. The legal argument is important, but the establishment need to know that the people care. And that's what that's all of us. And so thanks again for inviting me here. It's an absolute privilege to work with such amazing people. The adrenaline of it all is the only thing that keeps me going, so I'm pretty exhausted, but we'll get there because we have to. Thanks.